Lindsay? Yeah. Members of Parliament, support staff, radio listeners, TV viewers, all those following this meeting via social media, also members of the media, good afternoon to one and all. I welcome you to the continuation of this Central Committee meeting number 2 for today, Monday, April 15th. I want to give a special welcome to the Caretaker Minister of Finance, Mr. Artwell Irian, and his support staff. We have established a quorum of 9 members. Please stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. I have not received any notifications. Is there any notification from the floor at this time? Thank you, MP Marlin. It shall be noted that MP Duran will be late for this meeting. Thank you for that notification as we continue with the agenda point for this meeting. The agenda point for this meeting is the detailed outline on the ongoing ENNIA situation, the proposed ENNIA loan mentioned in the media by State Secretary Van Huffelen, the impact on the national budget, and government's intentions towards the situation considering the September 30th, 2023 deadline. This meeting was requested by the members of Parliament Gumbs, Peterson and Weever, and it is dated September 20th, 2023, registered on the incoming documents number 25 of the Parliamentary year 2023-2024. Going over to the further details of this agenda point, as mentioned, it was on September the 30th, 2023, that Parliament received a letter from the members Gumbs, Peterson and Weever with a request for an urgent Central Committee meeting of Parliament to discuss the above-mentioned agenda. The presence of the Minister of Finance was also requested. This meeting commenced on September the 27th, 2023, during which the Minister of Finance gave a presentation on the agenda point, and members took the opportunity to ask questions to the Minister regarding the ongoing ENNIA situation. The meeting was then adjourned to give the Minister time to prepare the answers to the questions posed, and so on March 6th of this year, Parliament received information regarding the ENNIA situation and the answers to the questions posed during the Central Committee meeting of September 27th. All members of Parliament have received a copy of this document, and it is also accessible on the Parliament General Team. During the continuation of this meeting on March 18, 2024, the Minister of Finance presented an update and additional documents on the ENNIA situation to Parliament. And after a brief adjournment, members of Parliament posed questions to the Minister, who answered some of the questions posed. The meeting was then once again adjourned to allow the members of Parliament the opportunity to review additional documentation received. It is important to note in this regard that on Wednesday, April the 10th, 2024, Parliament received confidential documents from the Minister of Finance as it regards the outline agreement for a resolution on ENNIA, which confidentiality clause was subsequently released by the Minister of Finance on Friday, April 12th. This document was then openly shared via email with the members of Parliament. So I would now give the floor to the Minister of Finance to give his opening remarks. Minister Irian, I invite you to take the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to the Khafir. Good afternoon to the members of Parliament. Good afternoon to the staff. Good afternoon to the viewing public. I'll head right into the topic of today. On September 27, 2023 and March 18, 2024, we had a Central Committee meeting, as was mentioned before, with Parliament to discuss the resolutions for ENNIA as we presented. On April 2nd, 2024, I provided Parliament with answers on the outstanding questions of the Central Committee meeting of March 18th, 2024. On April 9th, 2024, I provided Parliament with the final version of the outline agreement resolution ENNIA to be signed. And on April 11th, 2024, the government of St. Martin and Curaçao and the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin signed the outline agreement resolution ENNIA, of which a version was shared with the Parliament earlier today. Having said all that before, today I will provide Parliament with a recap of the structure and the financials of the resolution. With the resolution of ENNIA, the future for the vulnerable 30,000 policyholders whose pensions were threatened to be significantly cut will be secured. Such a cut would have severe social and economic consequences for Curaçao, but also for St. Martin. So for the policyholders, this is a very good development. Basically, the resolution fund is found in the following solution, which is called a partial restart. First, a split is made of the life insurance portfolio between ENNIA Life and ENNIA Life New. 1. The rights and obligations accruing from premiums paid before ENNIA was placed under the emergency regulation on July 4, 2018 belong to ENNIA Life Old, and the rights and obligations accruing from premiums paid, including interest, since July 4, 2018 belong to ENNIA Life New. After the split of ENNIA Life Old will be part of a controlled runoff scenario, which will stay under the emergency. ENNIA Life New, together with the other healthy parts of ENNIA, being ENNIA Schade and ENNIA Zorg, will be restarted as a new legal entity and competitive insurer, fully capitalized, reorganized, and fully licensed. The ENNIA Carib Life Old, together with ENNIA Carib Holding and ENNIA Carib Investments, will stay under the emergency regulation and will be financed by a resolution fund. The healthy parts of ENNIA will fall under the new management foundation, which foundation will have all the shares. The financial resolution. Based on the financial rights and obligations accruing from the premiums paid by the policyholders residing in St. Martin and Curaçao, St. Martin's share in the resolution is 6.49%, and Curaçao's share in the resolution is 93.51%. To finance the resolution fund, Curaçao will contribute as of 2027 for 30 years, yearly an amount of 30 million guilders, and St. Martin will contribute as of 2027 for 30 years, yearly an amount of 2.08 million guilders. These amounts relate to the 93.51% shares and the 6.49%. On top of the contributions of both countries, the Central Bank will contribute as of 2025 for a period of 50 years, yearly an amount of 50 million guilders to the resolution fund. To make it possible for the Central Bank to contribute for 50 years, yearly an amount of 50 million guilders as part of its gold reserves will be converted into interest-generating long-term bonds. The income from those bonds will guarantee an annual distribution of dividends by the Central Bank in the amount of 18.03 million guilders, of which 50 million will be transferred to the resolution fund and 3.03 to St. Martin. So for St. Martin, this means a total contribution of 30 years times 2.08, which is a total of 62.4 million guilders, while the dividend payout over the coming 50 years is estimated to be 50 times the 3.03, which is 151.5 million guilders. In addition, the central bank will provide a bond loan to the resolution fund to enable a capital injection into ENNIA, for which the resolution fund will obtain the certificates of shares in ENNIA from the management foundation, and a bond loan to the resolution fund to facilitate a peak facility to pre-finance any deficit in the contributions in any particular year. Both bonds will be covered by a guarantee issued by the countries. All the mentioned financial streams are captured in the term sheet as I provided to Parliament in Annex C. The first three term sheets pertain to the contributions from Curaçao, St. Martin, and Central Bank to the Resolution Fund. Basically, the contributions are subordinated loans. Curaçao will contribute as of March 15, 2027, yearly to 30 million guilders for a period of 30 years, as was mentioned. St. Martin will contribute as of March 15, 2027, the 2.082 million guilders for a period of 30 years. The Central Bank will contribute as of September 1st, 2025, yearly 50 million guilders for a period of 50 years. The fourth term sheet pertains to the peak facility. This is an overdraft facility created for a period of 50 years. In the event that between September 1st, 2024 and September 1st, 2074, it turns out that the annual contributions of the parties to the fund are insufficient to meet a deficit in a particular year, in that case, the resolution fund can float a bond for the central bank to subscribe based on Article 10, third paragraph, subparagraphs D and E of the Central Bank Charter. The central bank is authorized to subscribe to a bond as soon as there's insufficient collateral to cover the subscription. Sufficient collateral. For this reason, guarantee clauses taken up in the term sheet, taking the ratio of the ownership from Curaçao and St. Martin into account, and the situation that if one of the countries is in default, the other country does not have to guarantee that part. The fifth term sheet pertains to the transfer of the money from the resolution fund to part of ENNIA concerning the runoff. Basically, the yearly contributions received from Curaçao and St. Martin and the central bank are transferred by the resolution fund to ENNIA old. These are subordinated loans. The sixth term sheet pertain to a capital injection of 55 million guilders for the restart part of ENNIA new. For this resolution fund will float a 30-year bond for the central bank to subscribe. The resolution fund will receive certificates of shares in ENNIA new. As stated before, the central bank is authorized to subscribe to a bond based on Article 10, third paragraph, subparagraphs D and E of the Central Bank Charter. The central bank, as soon as there's sufficient collateral to cover the subscription, for this reason, guarantee clauses taken up in this term sheet. Now go on to approvals. CFT. By its advice of January 24th, 2024, the Board of the Financial Supervision, the CFT, advised the Kingdom Council of Ministers stated to find the proposed resolution acceptable. Bezaka, on March 22nd, 2024, in a press briefing, the State Secretary of the Interior and Kingdom Relations qualified the proposed resolution for ENNIA to be financially solid and sustainable, which will mean that once the countries adopt the proposed resolution, the refinancing of the 316.4 million guilders can be agreed on against favorable conditions, like for a long term against low interest rates. The COM, on April 9th, 2024, the Council of Ministers of St. Martin approved the resolution of ENNIA and also approved the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance to sign the outline resolution ENNIA on behalf of the country, under the reservation that Parliament of St. Martin will approve the resolution. This reservation is part of Article 14 of the Outline Agreement, Resolution ENNIA, and also of the National Decree, which is signed by the Governor on April 9th, 2024. Based on which the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance are authorized to sign the Outline Agreement, Resolution ENNIA, as we did on April 11, 2024. As this agreement contains a long-lasting financial commitment, it is important for Parliament to approve this resolution, as well as also take into consideration, among others, Article 100, 101, and 102 of our Constitution, regulating the budget authority of our Parliament. On September 27, 2023, we had our first Central Committee meeting with Parliament, which was based on a formal proposed resolution for a total restart of ENNIA with a capital injection which the Netherlands were willing to borrow to St. Martin and Curaçao. However, this proposal did not make it, as this loan would lead to, especially for Curaçao, for the interest burden norm of the Kingdom Act for financial supervision to be exceeded and violated, which will result in a situation that in the future, the necessary capital investments would be jeopardized. On March 18, 2024, the second Central Committee meeting took place, through which the current resolution was discussed. On April 2nd, 2024, I provided our Parliament with answers on outstanding questions, and on April 9th, 2024, I provided Parliament with the final version of the outline agreement resolution ENNIA to be signed. On April 11th, 2024, the governments of St. Martin and Curaçao and the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin signed the outline agreement resolution ENNIA, of which a version was shared with Parliament earlier today. And today, April 15, 2024, we have the continuation of the Central Committee meeting, after which hopefully a public meeting will be scheduled on the resolution ENNIA. The most important aspects for St. Martin. The most important aspects of this resolution would be for St. Martin. Firstly, of course, that no pension will be cut from the policyholders, which prevents social and economic damages. Other important aspects are, of course, the 50 years of dividend payments from Central Bank of 3.03 million per year, which over a period of 50 years will amount to 151 million guilders. Now that we pay an amount of yearly 2.08 million through our budget, we will have no issues with any interest burden norm of the Kingdom Act financial supervision, so that we could continue to invest in the country through capital investments. Now that the Netherlands have assessed the resolution as financially solid and sustainable, this will mean that this year's refinancing of the 316.4 million guilders will be against beneficial conditions with low interest rates. Without a resolution, an interest rate of 6.9% would be likely applied, similar to what has happened in our sister island, Aruba, which will mean an extra yearly interest cost of 11 million guilders. In my opinion, the resolution ENNIA is financially beneficial for St. Martin, and at present for the incoming government. This is on top of the other aspects that we already did for the budget, the 2023 capital investments, and the recently approved 2024 budget, where we did approve the next steps, given the permission to execute on the ENNIA, but also including our multi-annual year budget. Madam Chair, with that being said, this is the ending of the presentation.
Thank you, Minister Irian, for providing that update as to where things stand at this moment. And I now look to the members of Parliament and ask if there are any questions at this time. MP Gumbs. MP Gumbs, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady, and good afternoon to you, Rifir, the Minister and his support staff joining us, and my colleagues, those in the Tribune and those joining us online. For right now, I have one question and then more just as a comment. So the question, I guess, would be, let's say in a repentant fit, the parties that have brought us to this point with the ENNIA situation decide to pay back. What would happen to this loan facility at that point? Not that I'm expecting it to happen, but I do hope that all legal efforts are undertaken to get the persons who have brought us to this stage to financially feel some pain as we will as a country. And just as I know that the Minister answered it in the first iteration of the Central Committee meeting, but I still remain a little concerned with the structure for the resolution fund because it's still, let me find it here, it's quite a doc. In the corporate governance resolution fund Annex A to the outline of the agreement, the fund itself has a supervisory board and a management board, and the supervisory board is going to consist of 4 people, 2 supervisory directors on a binding nomination from Curacao, 1 from a binding nomination of St. Martin, and 1 on a binding nomination of the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Martin. And they are then meant to supervise the management board. But again, from a governance perspective, 4 people to a board. I'm just wondering what happens in the event of a deadlock, essentially. That's why normally it's 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 if you want to continue to keep it at a odd number so that in the event of a deadlock, there is a decision that can be taken. And if the minister could, I guess, explain a bit, because there was some confusion when reviewing for the peak facility. I understand what it pertains to, but I just, to make it clear then that this is meant to act as a sort of protection for us going into it. Because again, we're going now into an agreement, which I understand 100% why it has to come about from a fiduciary responsibility perspective, but that many of the persons that are going to be on this management foundation, which is not the management board of the resolution fund, but a separate entity that's going to hold ENNIA, Carib Holdings, and then under that you have ECL, ECS, and ECZ. It's a very complex corporate structure, and I just want to make sure that we are protected from what has happening again, because the central bank is going to have quite a say in who is going to be in these entities. The management foundation already, it says that the 3 members of that particular structure are going to be appointed by the CBCS. So what say do we have in who ends? It's right here in the. Let me find it. Hold on, because I see Mr. Granham shaking his head. But I just want to know, because it says the management foundation will have a board consisting of 3 people appointed by co-option. In derogation of this, the first directors are going to be appointed by the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Martin. So this is not the resolution fund. This is the management foundation that's going to hold some shares, I guess, of the holding company that's going to be established to hold the rest of ENNIA. The CBCS and their lack of proper regulation and supervision is why we're here. In the past, previous directors have been protected by politicians from this island when the supervisory board at the time was highlighting that something was wrong. Regardless of what persons who have been in this hall would like to think, this has been an issue that has been on the supervisory board's radar for Central Bank and the Dutch Central Bank for some time. So I just want to make sure that we're not going to end up in a similar construct, I guess, once this facility is underway. So just the 2 questions that I had were, what if, in a repentant fit, the individuals who brought us here from the ENNIA side decide to pay back? Because, not many of us had an apartment on Brickell Avenue paid for by a central bank. And then 2, what say do we have in who gets put on the management foundation? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Gumbs, for those questions. Any other member of Parliament? We have MP Ludmila de Weever. MP de Weever, you have the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Minister and your team, my colleagues, those in the Tribune, everyone, Bonsi Man as well. Madam Chair, I want to start off like this, right? Last week when we saw the article come out, everyone was in a frenzy mostly in terms of the feedback that was coming to me, because they were like, how this government going to enter us into a 50 million year loan? And everyone was panicking. I've been a 50-year loan, and everyone was panicking that this outgoing government, this caretaker government, is tying us down with a 50-year loan. Now, if one of the issues that I have with the way that information was presented last week was the fact that it was shared like fear-mongering, you know? It was to scare everybody. It wasn't to tell you the reality of the situation, that this ENNIA saga is an ongoing issue that now a government that is outgoing and then the new government going in gonna still have to deal with at the end of the day. But what I was missing in it is a digestible way of it to be explained to us, to understand why this is not a loan. In fact, I was not happy about this kind of resolution, because what this is what we often see in irresponsible financing. It's a bailout. It's not a loan. It's a bailout for collusion between governments, a regulator, and members everywhere else. I can go down the list, but the point is made. This is collusion of bad business practice and government practice in the past. And here we are now finding ourselves where we have to enter into 30-year bailout by our country and a 50-year bailout by the regulator who should have foreseen this stuff beforehand. So what my first reaction was, well, through you, Madam Chair, Minister, I mean, here we are cleaning up something, but how do I know it's not going to happen again? How do I not know that the person, the stakeholders in charge, the person responsible for getting us where we are, meaning governments, Ministry of Finance, CBCS, whoever, that it's not going to happen again? Like what assurances are in place that the new companies, once they're formed, are going to perform well and be audited well, be regulated well, and then the central bank is going to do their job, and then government's going to do their job and not interfere and not collude and save people and all that. And you see where I get to this story of where we're starting today, because we're not getting the big picture of this dilemma. We are in a dilemma where now we have to clean up people beforehand who messed up. We're bailing out. And then what made me upset is the fact that here we are so willy-nilly keen to go bail out a company, and then we still had the saga with L.N.L happening. So why aren't we bailing them out? And I want to know from the minister, what's the difference between the bailout? How can we bail out an entity that is regulated, shared between two islands, and a central bank shared between monetary union between two islands? How come we didn't bail out and come with a solution to bail out our own government-owned companies, since we act as guarantor anyways for it? What's the difference? Because you have to understand how it's being consumed and understood by our community on St. Martin. I'm talking about St. Martin. So and that's where last week the story that came out in the paper was not a nice one, because you have to understand how people are going to interpret this story. So I appreciate you coming today, Minister, to start, it's a start, to explain this country the responsibility we have now in a bailout. So you started off good. You gave us a bunch of math and all that, but we still have to approve, because if I look at the article that you released, which was an improvement from last week's article, the article stated that Parliament has to approve. And so it was something that came out today, and it said Parliament still has to approve. So is that true? I mean, I know my role here, so I don't want anyone to think that I don't know my role as a member of Parliament, but when you see the article and you go through this document, you kind of feel like, well, you're coming here after the fact. You already signed off something, and what is our role there still? We have a new government that's going to be sworn in, God's willing soon, and are they going to continue this? And if they don't continue it, what's going to happen? And that's what I want to understand, because when the newspaper is saying Parliament has to approve it, I want you to explain that to the public of what the overall responsibility is of this bailout. And then you refer to an amount of 2.08 million that is the responsibility, the contribution, the portion that St. Martin is responsible for, and then a potential dividend of 3-point-something million. So basically, it's like an offset kind of, you're telling me, is that, you know, we're getting out a dividend. Explain that better. Explain that better so people can understand it. Explain that, because now the way that you just explained it to me is, we're supposed to be getting paid by the central bank dividends of 3 million, and then what we have to contribute in our bailout is 2 million. So that means St. Martin still ends up with 1 million. Is that correct? Because that's what I need to hear. I need you to be able to explain that. So do I understand that it's not so bad? because last week everybody thought that all taxpayers were now going to have to pay 50-year loan. And and this is where communication is really important, because while I appreciate him being the Minister of Finance being here today, Madam Chair Lady, I am still missing the bigger picture of ENNIA. This is just the start. There was somewhere a term starting about a restart or something like that, or I don't know what the word was used, but this is the start, because we're not even touching the things that are linked to ENNIA. Because in the beginning of the year, you had the Parliament of Curaçao, make a decision to sell assets at ENNIA. So I want to understand when a parliament on another island that we're linked with, that we still have to now do a bailout with that parliament, with central bank, where do we start talking about the fact that the parliament outside of St. Martin made an agreement, they approved, to sell the assets of ENNIA, which part of it is in our country. Part of it is in our country. So I just want to know, at what point do we start saying, well, when do we start to bring Mulla Bay back home if that asset is related to the ENNIA saga? And while we're still on the topic, is it the stuff that is happening with Mulla Bay related to ENNIA, because this is why we're here in the first place? What happens there? What happens to the persons that are still working possibly at the towers? Is there some is there some saving for the people that are there, that when we're doing this bailout, are we going to bail out the towers? Is something going to happen from the towers workers? Like, you understand where I'm going with this? Because I'm so confused to this restart, but it's leaving so much more questions open to me. And on another note, Madam Chair, while we're there, this is something that when we started to talk about this ENNIA meeting back in March, now we're here for the continuation of it, I remember explicitly telling the minister, I need the numbers, because I'm a numbers nerd, right? So we had 15 pages we received that was also confidential, that we could have gone upstairs to the Khifid and review, but it was 15 pages of the beginning part of this entire document that's now, I think, 82 pages, with a translation in English for those that don't understand Dutch. Thank you in advance, Minister, for letting that come through to us. But I also don't think that it's enough time in this meeting to understand everything that came in that document, because what we got now from the Minister of Finance is a summary to tell us, don't freak out, because it's not as bad as you thought it was. The way that the message came across was just not sufficient for us to not freak out, because at the end of the day, it sounds to me like we don't have a choice but to bail out ENNIA. And I want to know everything else that's going to happen from a government around that it won't happen, and from a regulator as a central bank, that it won't ever happen again. And I know that we can't have no guarantees and we can't say the future, but the way that we conduct our business as Parliament, as the Council of Ministers, is to ensure that that kind of hokey-pokey collusion kind of thing don't happen again to screw us over in the future. So I wanted to state that the confusion needs to be clarified. And it's not just for my consumption, but for the consumption of the public. I would like the minister to explain to me what role does the Mulla Bay asset deal with this, in terms of, if something happens there, does that mean that this loan no longer exists? Because this document is very convoluted. It is financial legal talk. It is very complex agreements, and I am not a lawyer. I know we have one here sitting with us in this coalition, but it's something that people need to take the time to read, because the 15 pages in Dutch that was only the initial agreement proposal, which is in here, is now an 82-page document that I don't think anybody had the time to review and digest enough to come here and say what a minister has proposed and what he has done is indeed a good thing. The last question that I would like to get answered, hopefully today, because these are all part of the discussions that started since last year with this scenario, is for you to please reiterate to me why we had to do this in the first place, why we had to do a bailout. And then also, the reason, the last reason, I have a lot of questions. I'm going to come, hopefully some of my colleagues have more questions, because then I can come back to you and collect my thoughts. You know, initially when this was proposed, as in we would have to do this bailout, not a loan really, is that I wanted to understand why there was a rush to bail out this company in the entirety, in the entire sum that we had to bail them out for. Because we have 3,000 policyholders that are the responsibility of our country. They reside here in St. Martin, or they are from St. Martin policyholders. And the way that I would have foreseen this sort of proposal or, start to a bailout was, why couldn't we look at which pensions, what the financial obligation would be per year based on the person that would be on retirement and what they would have to be paid out on an annual basis. I also don't see that in here, and that's what I had asked about from last time. I don't know if it was on record or off air after the meeting with the finance minister, because we do talk often. But I want to understand why this setup, instead of looking at what is the financial obligation on an annual basis in order for us to see whether or not the new companies that we can create to basically get rid of the old company and give it a chance to survive later on. I just wanted to understand why I'm not seeing an annual obligation financial, because anyone knows from a pension perspective, when you're looking at numbers, you need to have an idea of what your annual obligations are going forward to make sure that you have sufficient money to pay that out. So from a company perspective, wasn't that possible? Because I'm pretty sure the entire lump sum didn't come up due. So I kind of feel like we're covering this entire lump sum without looking at the possibility of, well, do we actually need to bail them out for that much? And if that's the scenario, and Minister, you have to forgive me because I just, again, I'm going to reiterate, this is a complicated document. So I just wanted to know if there's any situation that could possibly happen where we wouldn't have to do the bailout, like where we wouldn't have to keep doing the bailout. If you can explain that to me. Because beforehand, when the minister was talking, Madam Chair, he was saying that if the annual contributions are insufficient, you can float a bond. Man, I don't want to do that. I want to understand what's going to happen in the good scenarios. I want to understand in the best case scenario. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
MP De Weever, thank you. And I now go over and give the floor to MP Emmanuel. MP Emmanuel, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to everyone, especially the Honorable Minister of Finance and his support staff. Good afternoon. I had so many to say, Madam Chair Lady, but my colleague, MP, the Honorable De Weever, spoke so much on the things that I wanted to make mention of. And to the Honorable Minister, I would want to say to him thank you, and I appreciate the fact that the documents received is in English. I didn't expect it at all until I went and opened the not so confidential document anymore. I don't know what has happened when governments has been outgoing, but they just get a sense of a little understanding that we finally get something that is not confidential. I mean, whew, how much the World Bank paying to the central bank, that is confidential, but 80-something pages concerning this whole ENNIA bailout is non-confidential anymore. But I take appreciation in that, so I say, Minister, I really do take appreciation for that fact. However, Madam Chair Lady, I'll tell you why this is sort of like bittersweet. It's sort of like understanding, because you sort of understand why something needs to be done. But then on the other hand, you're like, in my opinion, Madam Chair Lady, to me, Curacao won and St. Martin lost. To me, when I look at it, Curacao won. And I want to explain to you why I feel that is what it is, and St. Martin lost. You see, Madam Chair Lady, like what my colleague made mention of, you see, if Mullet Bay was tied into this, that St. Martin, look, listen, you're going to get this part of the patrimony that is in your island, you're going to get this part. If something relating to that was involved in this agreement, somehow I would have said, well, you know what? At least we can hold on to something that belongs to us. At least we are holding on to something that belongs to us. Now, Madam Chair Lady, I listened to the Honorable Prime Minister when she said, we are tied to the hip with Curacao. And that's exactly our problem. That there is exactly our problem, Madam Chair Lady. And this is the reason why I keep saying it all the time, at some point in time, we as St. Martin have to come to the realization that our concern is only St. Martin. It's St. Martin. Yes, the central bank is between St. Martin and Curacao. Yes, all those things is all fine and well. However, Madam Chair Lady, however, my disappointment here is all these entities will be created. All of them is going to be created. A new one is going to be created here. A new one is going to be created here. But who's going to have the oversight of these new entities, Madam Chair? The same central bank. The same central bank that had lack of oversight, that caused the problem, or have the problem to where it is today, that we are building it out, to use my colleague's word, Madam Chair, going to have that same oversight. What is St. Martin's role? And then when I listened to the minister said, in those new shares, Curacao is going to have, I think, approximately something like 96 point something percent. And St. Martin, I have 3 point something percent. I stand to be corrected on the percentage of it. And then it goes on to say that St. Martin will be paying 2.3 or 2.8 or 2.08 million, right? The central bank will be contributing 50 million. And then the minister make mention about the goal. The money that the central bank will be committing, that 50 million, where is it coming from? Where is it coming from? That 50 million, where is it coming from? Whose money is that? Because the central bank is generating monies from where? Where is that money coming from, Madam Chair Lady? Because what we are seeing is the 2.08 million. But Madam Chair, 5 years ago, the central bank had no dividends to give to St. Martin. Yeah, we get it now. We get it now because you leave it and you put out your foot, so we get it now. But what happened 4 years ago? 4 years ago, we got nothing. They had no dividends to give to St. Martin, Madam Chair. But you see what happened, and this is the reason why I said Curacao won. So to fix that problem, Madam Chair, they have now found dividends. So, and that's why I spoke to the minister the last time, we are going to give you your dividends, and from your dividends, we're going to take this portion to pay, and then you're going to get the 1 million balance back. But we ain't get nothing. The dividends is mine anyway. It belongs to me. All of it belongs to me. I am the one to make a decision from that. St. Martin is the one to make the decision from that. Not the central bank. Not to bail this out. They are making the decision, not us. Not us. So we are tied into this for 50 years. But who to the outgoing minister, Madam Chair, and to the Honorable Prime Minister, PSAS and etc., who tell them that St. Martin won't be tied to the hip with them for 50 years? Who told them that? And that's the problem. That's what I'm talking about. Curacao won. Because the majority of everything is in Curacao. 25%, not 25,000 of the policyholders are for Curacao. 3 is about St. Martin, out of the 30,000 or 5,000, whatever it is. But I think about 3,000 policyholders for St. Martin. So the majority of it is for Curacao, Madam Chair, with a central bank of 2 directors that had an argument in the past and in the future. And like what my colleague said, big mansion house on the avenue. No president of St. Martin for the central bank had that. None. Madam Chair Lady, they were not the ones at the helms when this happened. Not one St. Martiner. You had Trump and you have Jardine. Where both of them from? Curacao. And with all the funny business always going on there, Madam Chair Lady, St. Martin now have to pay for it. So I am asking, where's the win? Where's the win for St. Martin? How is it a good thing? But I understand the role of the finance minister. But again, Mother Bay stays where it's at. We still got to dish out more money. We joined for 50 years. Where's the win for St. Martin? What is St. Martin really getting? Nothing. all that's going to happen. I understand the shrink in your face, but you have to break it down simply for me, Minister, because I don't understand how is it that we are winning. What I do understand is that the collapse of ENNIA will not happen. That will damage the economy of Curacao much more than what it is here in St. Martin. They are the ones who will be hurting much more. Not St. Martin. But we are paying into it for something that we did not cause. I have a few questions, Madam Chair, but like I said, my colleague already went through most of what I want to ask, but I have a few questions still. I would like to know, Madam Chair, what are the details of this resolution exactly? And is it tied to the conditions of the COVID loan refinancing, which is for a period of 20 years, or any other financing? Did the Netherlands agree to forgive the loans, saying we agree to the bailout of ENNIA? Where will the new entity be established that will take over all the good running branches of ENNIA? Will that be Curacao or St. Martin? And what does it mean for our economy? And I believe my colleague asked this question too as well, but I'm going to ask it over. What was the urgency to sign this agreement, seeing that the previous urgency was to either to have 700 million ready by December 2023, or an annual agreement for a yearly injection, or the pension fund will go belly up and people would lose their pensions? When did this change? I would also like to know, how is it possible that nobody at the central bank is losing their jobs? How is it possible that nobody is losing their jobs over this matter? It took 5 years for the central bank to realize the money movement and another 2 years to jump into action. So how was it that the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Martin, overseeing their regulatory tasks, exactly, Minister, how it is, what it is they was doing, that they didn't see this? Was it there any collusion between the bank employees, board members, management, and judicial branch, seeing the longevity of the matter prior to uncovering it? Is the minister stating that St. Martin is buying Mullet Bay or not? Playing with words, like being part of the negotiation process. When the stake is less than 7%, is not a real solid position, or am I mistaken? Seeing that Curacao is receiving 16.6 million in social premiums, and thus only really investing 13.4 million is a great deal. What does it mean for St. Martin with its 3,000 policyholders, qua social premium income, versus the 2.3 million injection into the new ENNIA? Yeah, but that's what. Anyway, sorry about that. We're going to deal with that after. How much is the Central Bank of Curacao and St. Martin injecting dividendly yearly? Will ENNIA be sold to a private entity as per the approved motion of the Curacao Parliament to eradicate the 50-year payment? Mullet Bay belongs to ENNIA now for 93.3%, but who owns the other 6.7%? Madam Chair Lady, who owns the other 6.7% of this property? You see, Madam Chair Lady, these are some of the reasons why I'm saying I don't see where St. Martin has gained. Now I understand we are protecting the 3,000 policyholders that we have here. But I mean, couldn't we use, or couldn't we have them taken up and pay this money ourselves that we are going to pay, that we are paying for this amount of years? Couldn't we have had an agreement with APS and take up these individuals into the pension funds and inject this same money that we're injecting now into APS to take care of the 3,000 policyholders? Just a question I would like to know. I thank you very much, Madam Chair.
MP Emmanuel, thank you. And I continue, and we have MP Roseberg. MP Roseberg, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to my colleagues and Minister. Thank you for your presentation on this matter. Also support staff and everybody here present and also listening online. I also went through the document which was received on Friday. It was pretty last moment, but with my legal expertise, I was able to scan through it. But what I would like to get clarified is, and I think my colleague also asked it, I read the opschortende voorwaarden, so the suspensive conditions in regards to this agreement. And the most important part, I think, is that Parliament has to agree to it. So Sint Maarten Parliament and Curaçao Parliament needs to agree to the Hoofdlijnen Accord resolution of ENNIA. So if that can also be clarified, that that's the case. Other than that, I would like to know, through you, Madam Chair, what the reason is that the law that is applicable to this agreement is the law of Curaçao, and why not Sint Maarten, why that was chosen. And also the judge that will be able to look at the case if it comes to a legal procedure is the Court of Curaçao. Why wasn't it, for example, chosen the Joint Court of Justice so that all islands and then also Sint Maarten could file a court case in Sint Maarten and not that has to go through Curaçao? That was also a question of mine. And then if I look at other detailed question is that I would like to know that based on my research then, the central bank has not been able to generate sufficient income to pay the dividends. And what guarantee, through you, Madam Chair, can the minister give that the dividends can be paid from 2025 up to the amount of the 3 million guilders per year? And what happens if the central bank is unable to pay the dividends? How will this shortfall will be covered? I saw the inspanningsverplichting, but if that is not, if they're not able to make that, what will then happen? I didn't see that in the agreement, but it's possible that I maybe have missed it. Also, in regards to the dividends, I read that about 15 million will go to the resolution fund and about 3 to Sint Maarten. And what's the reasoning behind this? And what part of the dividend is Curaçao entitled to? Those are my questions for now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Roseberg, and I continue and give the floor to MP Gumbs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. I just had one more question and one more comment for the minister. And my comment touches a bit on what MP Emmanuel was saying in his statements, where he asked about the sale of ENNIA to private ownership then. And indeed, in the overall discussion, the Management Foundation can actually sell off the participations of ENNIA. So whether it's ENNIA Caribe Leven or Schade or Zorg, as they become more profitable, I guess, but also it requires prior approval of the Management Foundation, yes. And the Management Foundation can only give approval after prior approval by the Resolution Fund, since the Resolution Fund is going to hold the depository receipts. And this goes back to what I said regarding the governance of the Resolution Fund. 4 people, 2 from Curaçao, 1 from the central bank, which MP Emmanuel is not wrong, will probably be someone from Curaçao, and 1 from Sint Maarten. If they're at a deadlock to sell one of the participations, what then? So just from a governance perspective, I really want to understand the logic and the reasoning behind this 4-man supervisory board that has to give their approval first before the Management Foundation can sell. And also, maybe a touchy question, is there a written or unspoken agreement that persons that had a hand in bringing us here are forbidden to be one of these supervisory directors? Because if I see certain persons who I know were part of the advisory committee in Curaçao on this matter. As part of that, anyway, so that's number one. And number two, what at the end of the agreement, it's mentioned, as is normal with these types of deals, that it's subject to regulatory approval. So I believe that as this progresses, there have been discussions with the relevant regulatory bodies. I did see that Aruba's central bank has not yet really given approval for the transfer of the post-emergency liabilities and other assets from the Aruba section to be transferred. So what happens if, for some reason, a regulatory body holds back the execution of this facility? What happens to the interest rate and the finance loans that we have been made to understand are contingent on this facility and this solution? So that's it for me for now, Madam Chair, and I thank you very much.
Thank you, MP Melissa Gumbs, and we continue, and I give the floor to MP Luc Mercelina. MP Mercelina, you have the floor.
President of Parliament, Secretary General, my members of Parliament, and those in Tribune and following via social media, good afternoon. Minister, I have only a few questions for you. The first question I have is if there has been other ways that has been explored to see if we could have a pension regulation for the only 3,000 clients that were affiliated to the ENNIA insurance company. So actually it's only 3,000. My question is, all of a sudden everybody rushed, as my colleague members of Parliament said, to rush to sign a resolution for the survival of ENNIA. While, as Mr. MP Emmanuel said, we are losers in this deal. And what is the reason that we rushed still in the direction of an organization that has proven to fail in guaranteeing continuity for the people of St. Martin? I do not understand the agenda that we all rushed into trying to save a ENNIA that actually was not beneficial for the people of St. Martin. That's the first question. Secondly, the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin had for a few years the oversight over ENNIA. My question is now, who is now overseeing the functioning of the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin in these cases? So everybody realized that the controlling function of the central bank and oversight function has failed. This same central bank now is dictating to us in big pictures in the newspaper how we have to sign a resolution for everybody to get out of the problems. But who is in this organization now, in this structure in which central bank is a partner, who is now keeping the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin accountable for what has happened in their agreed function to oversee what was going on in the ENNIA for a few years? Do we have, as Minister of Finance, for example, an authority to question the functioning of the Central Bank of Curaçao and St. Martin in this case? A third question I have is the role of the Parliament of St. Martin. Can the Minister, through Madam Chair, explain me what the value is of the signed resolution in a country that your Parliament, that carries the government, in case disagrees with what has been done in signing a resolution without approval of Parliament? What does that mean? That's something that actually is going to commit the country for the coming 30 years at least. What is now the role of Parliament, as is stated that Parliament must agree to carry this resolution? What will be the case if Parliament disagrees with a document that has already been signed? I'm a little worried with the commitment of ENNIA as such to continue trying to look in that direction to give continuity to financial aid in, for example, pensions for the people of St. Martin. And why do I say that? In 2021, a settlement agreement has been made with the workers of the towers via the Sun Resorts that is also from that angle of the owners. And until today, in that settlement agreement of 2021 for the workers of towers, no penny has been paid to the workers. And again, although the fact that we have been in deficit in our responsibility to pay out the agreement that has been made with the workers of the towers in 2021, today we are running to the same group of people again, keeping them alive, hoping that they're going to keep up their agreement that they made in this resolution. So for everybody to think that we still have the workers of the towers still waiting on the commitment that has been made in 2021 for the settlement that has been made for them that until today has not been paid. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Marcelina, and we continue with MP Jacobs. MP Jacobs, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to the griffier, my colleague members of Parliament, the Honourable Minister, and his support staff, as well as those joining us here in the Tribune, and of course to the people of St. Martin. Good afternoon to you one and all. Madam Chair, I have listened to some of the questions being asked. There's feedback. I've listened to the questions being asked, and while I can understand that indeed for the public of St. Martin it has to be clear what the agreement sign mean, I do ask that the minister give some clarity on exactly why we are here, because I think I heard one question asking about loans and then another one saying that this is not a loan. So I think that would definitely throw even more confusion in the minds of the people. In terms of the loans, the COVID-19 loans, and the interest rate that was being requested of us vis-a-vis the interest rate that we're now getting based on this solution. I'm hearing persons speak about the importance of why it was so important to bail out or ensure that the 3,000 St. Martin pension holders would be able to receive a pension and not then fall back on the government of St. Martin. I think that needs to be clarified for sure. I'm sure I heard you said it before, but indeed it seems to not be understood. So with your indulgence, Minister, clarify that as well. And I would also like some of the members in here to consider how sometimes the rhetoric that is stated on the floor of Parliament, on radio stations, and in the media adds to the confusion of the people of St. Martin. A lot of times we're talking about what is confidential and what isn't confidential, but I guess once we are sitting in government, we'll understand a bit better that when you are in negotiations, you cannot divulge all that information, or your counterpartners will have all the information before you can actually negotiate. So that also explains why sometimes information that was previously confidential can be shared after the fact. As for the ownership of Mullet Bay, a lot of the rhetoric also out there gives the impression that somehow or the other the St. Martin government owns Mullet Bay. I think it needs to be clear historically who has owned and currently owns this property and what are the conditions of owning it as well. If you can clarify that, Minister, I would appreciate it. And as to go back to my first statement related to the interest, is there a savings that we are having by having a solution for this ENNIA problem? How much is St. Martin actually saving? And lastly, the budget of St. Martin that was passed just recently, did the Ministry of Finance include anything in there pertaining to the agreements or projecting payments that will be made regarding the agreements with ENNIA? And if so, would not constitute Parliament's involvement in the decision-making process as it relates to that? Thank you, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to ask these few questions.
Thank you, MP Jacobs. And I see that MP De Weever would like the floor. MP De Weever.
Thank you, Madam Chair, lady. I did President Hayes, but I figured I might as well just clarify a couple things here with it, because I know that Mulla Bay was brought up again, and I'm referring to this as an asset that was put up. A portion of it was put up for sale to see if they can kind of get some monies back to do this ENNIA sort of bailout to make everything less, right? And I believe whoever they are trying to get money back from, if I think that might be ongoing. But the main thing that I'm trying to get at here is part of this whole court case and saga also resulted, I believe, in a new appraisal being done that was impartial about the property. And I would like to know if that is in case the deed when it comes to like right of first refusal, or if St. Martin has any preference to say what they want to do with that property before it goes to be split up between off-island parties like Central Bank or the government of Curaçao, Curaçao's portion, and us. So I know I brought it up beforehand, but I would like a little bit more clarification on, is the minister aware of this new appraisal that was done, and whether or not St. Martin has been considered to, if a provision has been made in this agreement or in the discussion with all the parties involved in this agreement, that St. Martin would have right of first refusal to do what we want to do with a property that is on our island, as opposed to letting anything happen with it without trying to protect what belongs to us. And I am very well aware that this was a privately owned property. Previous times when there has been discussions on this floor for St. Martin to take back land and purchase Mulla Bay. Sometimes I kind of felt like when that discussion started, it wasn't done with the intention of giving it back to the people in a nice way. It was done to do exactly what's happening now on Mulla Bay, is to basically develop it and give it off to different people and have jet skis in the water and more restaurants and stuff added on. So I really mean that. Is there an overall big plan of action for what we envision as the best thing for our people with Mulla Bay? And if the minister is aware of the appraisal being done that was impartial? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP De Weever. I see no indication of further questions to the minister by members of Parliament. And having heard the questions, it would suffice me just by asking you, Minister, the following additional questions, additional in terms of questions already posed by the members of Parliament. Minister, you have confirmed, and I picked that up from the article in the document, that one of the approvals to be sought is from Parliament. And thus, this meeting being a continuation of a meeting that started in September last year, I would like to ask you, when is this matter going to be officially submitted to Parliament for Parliament to then handle it? Minister, I think my next question ties into a question asked by MP Jacobs, but I want to be a little more specific about it. If the ministry and the minister can outline in numbers this solution versus what would have been the case had we not reached a solution. In other words, the higher interest that we would have to pay in numbers, how that compares over the entire period of time with the solution. So the solution now, as well as what it would have meant if we did not have a solution and would have had to pay the higher interest for loans with the Netherlands over the entire period of time. The minister referred to the approval, for the lack of a better word, by CFT, as well as the agreement of the Dutch government for this newfound solution. Newfound solution because, as we all know, there was a previous solution on the table, and that was at the at that time rejected by Curaçao. And my question in connection therewith is, how has been the official communication from the Dutch government via the State Secretary? And if it was in official written communication, can that be shared with the Parliament of St. Martin? To the Minister, in the answers provided to questions asked by members of Parliament before, the members of the Supervisory Board from St. Martin were mentioned by name with the annex that on nomination. Has the nomination of these board members in the meantime been ratified? If not, why not? Why is it taking so long that these persons have been nominated and their nomination has not, at least by the time we got that letter from the minister, were still on nomination, using the words in the letter by the minister? Minister D, and I would like, if it has not been done, if it can be provided before the Parliament is expected to handle this official document, and that is the following. In a previous response by the minister, it was indicated that when asked in how far St. Martin was involved in the process to come to this proposal, the answer was given, and I paraphrase, that Curaçao established a committee without St. Martin, and when St. Martin objected or admonished that fact, then St. Martin the committee started to work along with St. Martin. And so my question is, has a picture solely for St. Martin of what this agreement means for St. Martin, has that picture been had? Has it been painted? If it has, can we receive that picture? And if not, can it still be done for the handling by Parliament of this headline agreement? So, analysis of the agreement solely from the perspective of St. Martin. What does it mean for St. Martin? What does it mean positively? What does it mean negatively? What could it potentially mean for St. Martin? Has in all of the discussions, the question regarding the regulator, the most important regulator, as a participant in this entire process, has that come up? And if so, what is the feeling about that from the ministry? Can the minister explain further a statement that nothing, and I paraphrase, will happen to Mullet Bay without St. Martin's approval, St. Martin's knowledge, St. Martin's, and then I put a question mark, what and how? What did the minister mean with that, and how can that be assured? Does the minister consider that following up on the development plan for that area, that will give some kind of a steering by the government of St. Martin? The minister highlighted the fact of the approvals thus far given for this agreement, and one of them is in the document or in a Landsbesluit signed by all the authorities who would have to sign, which include the governor of St. Martin. Can that Landsbesluit be shared? I checked at least the last document provided to Parliament, and the Landsbesluit, while referred to, is not included. Can that Landsbesluit still be shared? And Minister, I was very much interested, and this would come as no surprise, in the fact that on behalf of Sun Resort, the Central Bank of St. Martin, on behalf of Sun Resort, took the government of St. Martin to court regarding structures on the beach of Mullet Bay. And I asked the minister, in first instance, the Minister of Romy, to share that verdict by the court. What was it? And following the budget debate in which the same question was posed, the Ministry of Finance, representing the Minister of Finance, representing the Minister of Romy, provided Parliament and myself with a judgment, a verdict of the court in first instance of February. February. That's all that was provided to Parliament. In that February judgment, the courts is telling the government of St. Martin, the Minister of Romy in particular, that they are instructing the government to carry out the decision taken by the court in November of 2023. And my question is, if the government is going to provide Parliament with the court's decision of February instructing the execution of their decision of November 23, why was not Parliament provided with the decision of the court in the case of Sun Resort regarding the constructions on the beach of Mullet Bay? Why was that not provided to Parliament? How would I or any member of Parliament know what reference is being made in the February verdict? So, can the minister please provide me and the Parliament of St. Martin with the decision of the court of November 2023 regarding the request by the Central Bank of St. Martin on behalf of Sun Resort as far as it pertains to the structures currently on Mullet Bay Beach? If the minister can provide me with a November 2023 decision. Minister, I believe that with the questions posed by all the members of Parliament, mine added to those, that I would get further insight into the matter as presented to Parliament. And so, Minister, I need to know from you if you need, first of all, I'll adjourn for a few minutes and then we can discuss the furtherance of this meeting. You had some reaction to make, Minister?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, we need more time, but I would like to make some comments on some of the questions posed, and just to give a summary on certain items before going into detail into the questions, or you want to do that after the adjournment?
Yeah, I would suggest, Minister, if you need to come back to respond to the questions, that you come back and respond to all of them.
Yes, but I do want to respond to some things now.
You want to?
Yeah.
You don't have to be so emphatic about it. You want to respond to, you want to make some comments, or you were like, no. So I'm like,
I mean,
thank you, FP. Minister, back to you. You want to give some clarification on some of the things mentioned.
Yes.
You may go, but let me understand, you would need to come back, and when would that be to answer all of the questions
that
posed
I
by?
have to discuss with the staff.
Okay, let's adjourn for a few minutes so that you can give me that answer as well. You highlight the issues that you want to highlight, and we get over. So I'm going to adjourn for 5 minutes for you to have that discussion. Meeting adjourned for 5 minutes. Welcome back to the continuation of this Central Committee meeting of Parliament. We adjourned for a few moments as the Minister contemplated on his return to answer the questions as posed by members of Parliament. But before we adjourn for that time, the Minister will address a few points brought forward during the meeting. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes. There was a few comments. MP Weever actually mentioned an article that was posted, I believe, on Friday, and then one that's posted today. And I think that she's right. So the article posted on Friday was not one of ours, it's one of the media company. And that definitely depicted a different picture than what we put in our press release. Ours gives a historical, accurate picture and a timeline of events. In addition, it was mentioned that the MPs received the documents on Friday. That's not true. The documents were sent to Parliament on Tuesday. Not Friday. And yes, in the comments regarding the documents being in English, I'll thank my staff, Yap, for that. Even when we went to Curacao, there's always they even mentioned that, yes, your staff always fought us and said, no, we're not accepting any documents in Dutch. It needs to be in English for our Parliament. So we consistently always fought to have documents done in English. The comments by MP Gumbs, I also agree with in terms of understanding that the political influence of the past has us partially here where we are today when it comes to good corporate governance. And I think going forward also, we have to bear that in mind. I know MP even mentioned that politicians are the ones who protected individuals in the past. And it's good to emphasize that this government, again, was not, we inherited this situation. We were here again to fix a situation that was started by a previous government. And then the question was, what are we going to do to ensure that doesn't happen in the future? And I think no matter how much regulation and rules we put in place, at the end of the day, we still deal with human beings. And we always oppose a certain level of risk when dealing with human beings with low integrity. So I don't believe we could over-regulate. At the end of the day, dealing with human beings with low integrity will always pose a risk somehow. So I think it's also about us putting the right persons in positions, on boards, etc., and then also hold them accountable. In regarding to MP Christophe Madden mentioned that he feels that St. Martin lost. And I don't believe that St. Martin lost. I believe that the policyholders won, right? At the end of the day, we have 3,000 policyholders. MP Luc Marcelina also mentioned this, that while we rushing to fix the solution of the policyholders, a majority of those policyholders are actually persons that work at a medical center, right? And they have been months in a state of uncertainty, right? Not knowing what will happen in the future, not knowing what will happen with their pension. Even when we went to Curacao, we met persons on the road that they didn't start a press briefing, and they approached us while we were at a meeting, and they were like, hey, you know, I'm really concerned about this whole ENNIA situation. So I don't believe that St. Martin lost. I believe that the policyholders won. Another very important aspect is the question was posed there, I believe, was the refinancing part of it. Again, there was a situation, let's even take a step back. This situation happened because of persons in the entity taking out money that now that the central bank said, hey, something's wrong here, and now we're now in a court process, right? Something not too kosher happened while we're here today. As was mentioned before, it wasn't on us. This was something done in the past. But at the end of the day, we're accountable for not just the central bank, but we're accountable to the people. We're accountable to the policyholders. On top of that, we have a $360 million loan, right? A refinancing that we have to finalize by October. So it's not a rush. This is something that we have to finalize by October. 360 million guilders. The NEMS already made it clear, not that if we don't find a solution, basically called condition, if we don't find a solution for the ENNIA situation, we would not be getting favorable interest rates. And when we look at a non-favorable interest rate, we look at the 6.9% that Aruba got for their loans, which they have said more than likely will happen to us also. So now we have a solution that presents us with 2.08 million guilders. If you look at the interest rate of 6.9% over the 316.4 million guilders, then look at a figure of 11 million guilders, which is 5.5 times more than the 2.08 million guilders. So when we say St. Martin lose, I think St. Martin will actually lose, and actually I think the incoming government will be losing by having to pay an additional 9 million guilders extra per year on your budget than the 2.08 million, where you're actually getting dividends from the central bank to cover that loss. So the loss is not by on St. Martin. The loss in this current solution, the loss will actually be if we don't take the solution. If anyone watched the press briefing in Curaçao regarding the signing of the resolution, the question came up from one of the media houses there regarding Molly. And I made it clear there, I made it very, very clear there in that meeting. I said, no decision on Molly and the sale of Molly will happen without the government of St. Martin. And that's in the presence of the director of the central bank, the prime minister of Curaçao, the minister of finance Curaçao, and all the board members of the central bank. And no one opposed, no one had anything to say. We made it clear there, and I emphasized, I doubled up on that. So, and I've also made it clear to the current entity, ENNIA, that's managing ENNIA right now. Molly is, so I didn't grow up with the Molly that my parents know, and maybe some of the members of parliament in here know. So I didn't grow up with the Molly that was probably the #1 driver for the economy in St. Martin. So I don't necessarily have that same emotional attachment to that Molly, but because I grew up with Molly being a beach. But that doesn't mean that I don't understand the importance of Molly and the importance of it on our economy. And when I mentioned that, yes, as a government, we have looked at ways of how we could purchase it locally. And I also mentioned that it must come with a plan. If Molly is valued at X amount, we can't just make a purchase and add on to our debt again without having a plan in place to be able to maximize our efforts on Molly because I don't think that people also want us to buy Molly back to then have an effect on education, have an effect on justice, have an effect on tourism, right? That then puts us in a bad position. Then St. Martin loses. Purchasing Molly without a plan, for sure we're going to lose. So I believe as a government, I believe as a parliament, this current parliament, the incoming government, we really have to sit together and decide what we envision for Molly. Do we see a Molly with skyscrapers? Do we see a Molly with boutique hotels? Do we want a full golf course? Do we want a nine course? Do we want more nature? That we have to have a plan in place for Molly, and that has to happen together. It's not. I don't believe that's one single person makes that decision. So yes, in summary, again, I don't believe that St. Martin is losing. I believe under the current situation we have now, it is the best possible deal that we can have now that puts us in a position to win in the future. Also, we are not, I agree with the MPs that said it too. I want to make sure, and as a member of parliament, I will continue to make sure that we hold us accountable, that put us in this position, right? We have to continue the court proceedings. We have to continue going after who we have to go after. And once we get back that money, this situation comes null and void, right? And then we are in a super position to collect the full dividends of St. Martin. The full dividends. So again, we will continue to proceed with the court cases. We will go after who we have to go after. And once we get that money, this becomes null and void. We get our dividends, we add it to our budget. But again, that doesn't negate from the fact that currently we do not own Molly. We do not own Malaby now. So I want to make that clear to the people of St. Martin that this isn't something where the government can just take back Malaby. We haven't owned Malaby for a very long time. But we do need to put a plan in place to be able to get it back and make sure that it works for us and our economy. That's all, Madam Chair. And regarding the time, Madam Chair, based on the discussions with the staff and having to deal with the central bank, among others, we will need at least 2 weeks. And regarding the public meeting, I'm assuming after the CC that we go over to the public meeting to deal with approval of Parliament. That's what I would have assumed. That'll be all, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Minister. Just to go back to understand you for this meeting, you're saying you can only come back in 2 weeks to answer the questions. And then when are you going to send the document officially to Parliament for Parliament to start its, sorry? Minister, please respond. Put on the minister.
The signed documents have been sent to Parliament today, Madam Chair.
I know, but the government would have to officially send it and asking for Parliament's approval. We got your document and we have taken notice, as all have stated, but you would have to now officially present it and ask for Parliament to handle it.
In a public meeting, right?
Well, Parliament will decide whether it will go straight to a public meeting.
Okay. So we will do that, Madam Chair.
And you have an idea when that will be done, when the government will send this document officially, Parliament, this document was signed on such and such a date, according to Article so-and-so, your approval is needed for this document, and I hereby request that.
So we'll send confirmation tomorrow morning.
You will send a confirmation for that tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
That is noted, and yeah, I'll have to see how I deal with the continuation of this meeting with the answers to be provided, and maybe ask that you send those in as soon as possible in writing, so that we can somehow finalize this meeting here. Because to give another 2 weeks to come back to answer in this meeting, and in the meantime we would have received the document itself for handling, I don't think that would be very, very efficient. But I'll look at that. I'll look at that scheduling. But Minister, before I'll still have to adjourn in any case, unless we reach that agreement that these answers will be sent in writing. Let me look at the members of Parliament. Sorry, MP de Weever, you said you were going to say something, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It's exactly related to what you're now discussing with the minister, because let's just be real and honest here. We have less than 25 days before this outgoing or caretaker government has the maximum of 3 months they can hold their positions before the new government is sworn in. So let's be realistic. Is it realistic that the minister is going to be back? Because at the end of the day, the point of this meeting today was to literally get everybody to grasp the importance of what took place in Curaçao last week, to get everyone to understand that it was connected with low interest rates, and for everybody to really understand this and be able to realize that we're trying to cover 3,000 policyholders, and it comes at a cost to the country. So I just want to be realistic about it, Madam Chair Lady, because if the minister is going to come back in 2 weeks, it doesn't make any sense to me. So this is part of continuity. So the Parliament, I believe maybe we should just decide and be real and say, are we prepared to discuss a more realistic return to get answers if anybody else has any additional answers, and they can tell you that in a break. I'm sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP de Weever. That's exactly the point that I was relaying to the minister. And Minister, I would want to ask your indulgence, and also with the consent of the members of Parliament, please provide answers to these questions as soon as possible. And based on when we get those, I would decide on the scheduling of a meeting to handle the formal approval necessary of Parliament on the document. I'm going to close this one unless I hear objections from any member about receiving the answers to the questions posed in this meeting in writing. If you all can agree with that, then I will close that, but with the understanding that those answers are going to have to be provided in order for us to, yes, that is correct. Okay? Sorry, MP Emmanuel?
A very rare occasion, I would accept it.
Okay, thank you for that agreement. Minister, thank you. Members of Parliament, thank you. The answers to this Central Committee meeting questions, the answers will be sent as soon as possible by the Minister. Given the stage that we're at, the Minister is best called to answer these questions, this Minister of Finance, because of his involvement in the process, and then we can take up the discussion on the official document as signed by the government of St. Martin, the main line agreement, Huffelen and Accord. So with that, members of Parliament, thank you, Minister, and your support staff. Thank you to the support staff of Parliament and all those who have been tuned in to this meeting. Hopefully we'll get answers which we know are also to the questions which are also living in the public of St. Martin as soon as possible. With that understanding, this meeting of Parliament, the Central Committee meeting, is hereby closed. Meeting closed.